running. And
I'm gonna turn on the air conditioning because when I'm teaching, I always get heated. And how was attendance for that session?
yeah, there was a good few people there, above 100 people. So if you're watching it on the live stream, we'll be starting in about 7 minutes. Would you like to let people in, Patricia?
Sure.
So hello, everybody. Welcome. We'll be starting in a few minutes. Be aware that this is being live streamed and recorded. I'll repeat this information, so make sure that if you speak and appear on camera, if you speak, you will appear on camera, so make sure you want that. Otherwise, you can always type your question in the chat. And Patricia, would you like me to feed it to you, or would you like to monitor the chat?
I'll keep an eye on the chat. Yes. Thank you.
And everybody, you have powers to rename yourselves and tell us where you are in the world. And maybe drop in the chat what you do, what brings you here. If you're already a therapist or coach or a body-mind facilitator of some sort.
Also, let us know which sessions which has been your favorite, if you have attended other sessions. There's already been, what, 4 today?
I think more than that.
Dancer architect in Brighton. I love these combinations. Hi, Stefan. I love how life shows up. Patricia Tocaya. Tocaya is a name, a word in Spanish that means someone who's named like you. También en México. Bienvenida.
I love it how there's so many people in so many places in the world. Israel, the Americas, New York, Mexico. Where's everybody else?
Israel. There's a question in the chat about the replays.
The replays, I am going to be talking about that. So if you've purchased the All Access Pass, which if you're here, you must have done, you will get an email with the links and all the info tomorrow. You will be receiving information. Don't worry, we got you. We've got a coach, mediator, and trainer in the woods of NY State. Nice. And we still have a few minutes before we start. You still have time to think of that one person that you think might benefit from this, that will actually thank you for letting them know, and message them and send them the sign up page, which I will post in the comments here. There you go. Oh, certified TRE provider in Portugal. So we have people dealing hands-on with clients with trauma.
Welcome everyone who's just joining. We're just about to start. And I would love to hear things that you found interesting from the sessions that you've attended so far. I know there was one with Mark and Paul, Paul is a legend within the Embodiment Unlimited community. I did one earlier today with Karen, yoga for yoga teachers, trauma sensitive yoga. And there was one earlier today with Erica and the funning people who are too nice and who can't say no. I heard good comments about that.
Or maybe if you're just joining, what sessions have you picked out? What are you most looking forward to? If you're in a time zone where you're just waking up or something. Empowerment, love, and embodiment are the keys for healing. I was in that session when Mark said that.
That was Paul's, right?
That was Mark.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see the Paulness coming from that. Healing can happen in many different ways. Yes. Nurtured heart approach trainer. Sounds lovely.
And yeah, for those of you that are facilitators or trauma therapists or are working with this, we do have a special product coming up, which is directed to facilitators and therapists specifically. But I'll paste the links in the chat in the end there.
We're right on time. Do you want to start, Virginia?
We're right on time. Let me hit. There we go. So hello, everybody, and welcome to this Q&A session with Patricia Aguirre. She's a therapist and a yoga teacher, and she's a specialist in developmental trauma. She integrates her knowledge and experience of 26 plus years on Eastern philosophies with trauma-sensitive methods, such as transactional analysis, systemic therapy, and emotional focused therapy. Patricia is who young yogis want to be when they grow up. And she's the future queen of Mexico. So clearly somebody else has written this bio for her and not herself, but I think it's very true, and you'll find out why. I'm Virginia. I'll be tech hosting and hosting this session. So if you have any technical problems, do private message me. Thanks to those of you who are live. It means that you have purchased the All Access Pass and you've done the smart thing. As far as I'm concerned, there's loads of stuff. You can't catch it all. You need the recordings. And if you're watching this on a replay, you can still have the option to purchase the All Access Pass or the higher package and have those recordings with you to watch in your own good time. Do share this with one person at least that you think will benefit from it, and thank you for sharing. This is what we've put together here is kind of the normal person's guide to everyday trauma, to day-to-day little things and how they impact us. And after the live sessions are finished, replays will be sent out. You'll be emailed the information for those. So please do share with anyone who will benefit, and the info is there in the chat. So if you've been binge watching already, make sure to take care of yourself, take a break, maybe take some nutrition, water, food, stretch. It's nice for the presenter if you've got your cameras on so she can monitor your state and also have a visual feedback. You can always turn self-view off. And be aware that this is being recorded and live streamed. So if you want to ask a question with your voice, you will be shown on camera, but you don't have to ask with your voice. You can always type it in the chat and we'll read it out. So without further ado, I will give this over to Patricia. And
thank you, Virginia. And yes, that introduction was, of course, not written by me. This is the second time today that I have to laugh / blush and be slightly embarrassed about that, but yes. So let's get to it because we only have 30 minutes for these. So go ahead. This is a space for questions, ideally questions that have maybe through previous sessions, something moved, something that you want to clarify, something that you want to explore further. Of course, it doesn't have to be from these previous sessions, but maybe something that you can connect to these topics that have been discussed throughout the day. I know it's only, I think, 4, Virginia. Yeah, is that right? 4 sessions so far. You can type your questions in the chat, or you could open your microphones. Yeah. We're gonna be having these Q&A sessions throughout the week with 2 purposes. One, to actually get to a little more depth into certain topics, and also as a way of regulation, because this is a very important part of trauma work, and we like to actually walk the talk. That's what makes it an embodied practice. So it's, oh, you guys should be regulating and you guys should be allowing time to process these things. So we actually make this space for that precisely. So ideally, it could be questions regarding things that came up during the sessions, but could be from a personal perspective or from technical perspective. So fire away. Also, yeah, I forgot to mention that there's a way, so you can ask questions opening your microphones. You can type it in the chat, or you can private message them if you don't want your name or your face to be visible or recording, because as Virginia mentioned, this is being recorded, so it's not that confidential, even though this is something that's going to be seen only to people who actually have access to the package of the recordings. So we had a question coming in, how to stop eating as a coping mechanism. If you, yeah. There is, I think, Virginia, do you have a schedule on that? I think there will be a session on food. Will there?
Let me share my screen quickly. I'll look at it and get back to you while you. Let me look into it and I'll get back to you while you take the next question.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I will talk about it in a bit, but I was wondering because I do remember that it was mentioned during the planning phase of these topics. So one of the things that we discuss a lot from an embodied approach to dealing with trauma is to be able to widen the perspective of how we address a situation. So instead of like a pathology, even though naming it may be helpful at times, we want to widen and see what's happening with the person. So not just discuss from a behavioral perspective of why are you eating and you should stop that, and widen and see what's usually happening. So eating as a coping mechanism in the very traditional sense is a way to soothe something, right? So it's a hyper-aroused nervous system that doesn't have a way to regulate. So this is why it's important to look at the person and the whole situation and where that person is at. And where do we need to start building regulation for that person? So regulation means that that person is able to digest, and it's a coincidence that I'm using digestion in a food-related question, but being able to digest certain emotions, certain, yeah, I would just leave it at that, certain emotions. So it's important to notice where that person is in regard to whatever it is that that person needs to digest. And this is when we start assessing where that trauma thing can be. So it's either something that happened recently, or it's something that's deeper in their past, something that they know about, something that they don't know about. Not that these things are that important in themselves, but it gives us a key to how that person will be able to regulate. So it's easier when you know what you're actually regulating versus something that you gotta go explore and find. So, for example, one thing that a person might not be able to cope with is, for example, stress, because it's a person that's like an overachiever. So one of the things that this person needs to start regulating is the experience of rejection. Yeah, rejection is usually tied to overachieving and perfectionism. So whenever that person feels close to that risk, I don't know what to do with that feeling. I don't know what to do with that state. So how can I start down regulating from there? And also, how do I not escalate that much? And then that's why the person eats, right? So do you see within that line that I just showed you how we're not focusing on the eating at all, right? But we're focusing on what that escalates that person to make them feel that need to regulate through food. Yeah. Now, how to do that, that depends on the type of thing that you're working with, the type of tool that you want to use. But of course, one of the things that we use always in embodiment approaches is awareness, right? So making them recognize what is that thing that I am soothing, that I'm needing regulation from, just to start with, right? So, and ideally, we want to walk them through other methods of regulation that are not so unaware, so unconscious, and another one that are less, let's say, healthier, right?
So we have somebody who would like to unmute, Patricia.
Yeah.
Hi, Patricia. Thanks so much. Yeah, so I'm a coach and mediator and trainer, and I'm have a lot of space around holding other people's pain and trauma, a lot. And what I have trouble finding is people who have space to hold mine. And I have had the experience of being re-traumatized many times with therapists and in other groups. And I wanted to ask for your thoughts about people who have trouble finding space that people can hold safe space for their trauma, and you know how to do that without getting re-traumatized, how to seek that without getting re-traumatized.
Thank you, Ariel. Thank you. First off, I'm sorry to hear that has been your experience. And I will say that actually this is one topic that I proposed for all of these 70 topics that we're doing this week, trauma from therapy, because it's becoming such, I see it more and more. I could go on and on because I have thought about this and explored this a lot, and why it's happening more and more, but it would take up a lot of our time. But I do want to acknowledge that it is a thing, that it does happen, that it happens to a lot of people, and that it's difficult, right? Because it's trusting those who hurt you, whose role is to be there for you, and that is tough in itself, and it can be re-traumatizing because it's pretty clear to see what the way that I just phrased it, right? So yes, right? Yes to that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. I would start exploring the answer to that question, but always, particularly with trauma, my question always is, where is that person? And that's the answer that I take, right? So I think you've heard that a lot during the week, that not, or you will hear that a lot, that one size doesn't fit all. So where is that person? Where is this person in relationship to the issue at hand, right? So I will share one of the things that I did, because of course, I have also had the opportunity to live through these experiences myself. And one is to start doing my own research. And this is a lonely experience, because the ideal would be to people to already know what they're talking about. And that helps me sort of like be a little one step ahead of what I know that I want to find in the other person, in the therapist, right? Now, I would take this with a grain of salt in this movement of being one step ahead, because it's being one step ahead, but not repeating that pattern of I am supposed to be the one who knows better than the one who's supposed to take care of me. Yes? Because this can also be re-traumatizing in itself. Mm-hmm. Glad it's making sense for some. Yeah. That's why trauma work is so subtle. So it's like taking a step forward, but then taking a step back, and then one step forward. So it's playing with this active awareness adult state, but being able to also embody this receptive and place where we need help, right? I'm just touching on key points, but again, my question would be where the person is at precisely. And of course, I'm not going to ask you here because it's too open place to ask you to dig into this. But I think I could sort of share a little bit about that. Another thing that I do now that I did not do before is take my time to check up on that therapist, that class, or that method. Really take my time and not step into that as much. So, hey, can I talk to you? I just want to have a chat before we actually go into a session. Or can I see what this is about? Not necessarily from I need to know everything position, but as in I want to know if this is for me and I want to get a taste of this flavor. I'm taking as much time as it needs. These are like technical external things to do. An internal thing to do as well would be, and this is, I will refer to one trauma response that is highly common, particularly in women's embodiment, is that we are relatively disconnected to our own body wisdom. What do I mean by that? Yes, intuition, but from a body experience, like, does this feel right? Does this not feel right? And even, I'm sorry to go into like super subtle, but particularly when we're dealing with trauma, this feels right. And which kind of right does this feel? Right? Because sometimes it's, oh, I'm going towards the repeating of a pattern, and that's why it feels good. One thing that I use when I want to check up on this is use trusted people. Like maybe I go to one of my therapists, or maybe I go to my trusted friends who are also in a committed unconscious path with me, and I'm like, hey, I need to check up on this because in this area I don't trust my radar that much. But I don't leave it all up to them, right? So where I was going with this is being able to work with that validation of your own sensation. Yeah. How does that feel? How does that land? Is that enough? So far?
I don't want to take up more of the time of the session, but it lands well, and it gives me a lot to reflect on, and I'm going to listen back to it on the recording to get it more deeply. So I feel grateful for that. I will say, no need to respond, but just to sort of own one thing that happens for me, has happened, is that I have gone into places where I thought I had done most of those things and developed trust. And then it's after I develop the trust and open up that something goes massively haywire. And so been interesting. And in my view, usually it's because the other person is really, it's like something happens over there where they get really unattuned or do something that's suddenly drastically out of alignment. That's my experience of it. And then I can't cope with it because I'm wide open. So, so I'm going to reflect on your answers, and I just wanted to share that follow-up piece. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, in that case, I mean, again, listen to this again for all of these points. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. This unfortunately happens. It's a reality. And we could look at this from a perspective of, yes, we are at a risk, and a lot of people are at a risk. On another, one of the things that helped me go through this trauma from bad therapy, like therapy gone wrong, is recognizing that many schools of thought are just developing. And it's relatively new, all of the methods that have been used on us at some point. And I take it because I work in the field, but you don't have to do it, of course, if you don't feel like it, and if you don't work in it, to take it up a notch and to be even more committed to doing your own work and developing the skills and taking these thoughts even to the next stage of its evolution. Yeah. And thank you. How's everyone doing? Mm-hmm. Yeah, this resonates to more people, right? Yeah. Okay, I'm reading through the chat. Methods of regulation, especially for loneliness, which I think is the heart of many people's challenges. Yes, yeah, definitely looking for communities. I share this very frequently. One of the key components that I found in my personal experience, I know that it's not always as smooth as it was for me, but it was joining a women's circle. There were other attempts for other women's circles or places that would invite me, and I did not resonate and did not go into the work there. So it's not necessarily all circles are good, but definitely being able to be heard, of course, because it resonated with me, and as everyone says that it's a need that we have. That's one healing, one regulating space. There are more and more circles of this kind, but of course, it's important to recognize that not just because they're labeled circles or spiritual or sacred spaces or whatever means that they're actually safe, right? So I would take our discernment with us for the first several sessions and then see if I decide that I want to go further with this work, particularly because we come with a wound of this loneliness, right? So however that this feels for that person to start stepping into companionship, whether that can be for some people like, oh yes, I can go ahead and join a circle and start talking about my stuff. But for some of us, sometimes it's like doing something online, being there. And some circles are respectful enough to say, you can be here and you can be with your camera off, right? And eventually being able to dose it enough so that you can start participating a little bit more and bring yourself more of you, not because that's the ideal and we should be, but because you bring yourself into a more integrated version of yourself into these spaces, and you will feel more seen. So that's one. And it can be as diverse as joining, a chess club, if it's difficult at first. So something that's not necessarily as confrontational, depending on where the trauma lies, right? As actually being heard and being seen. Yeah. Is that sort of like what you were? Yes. Okay, I will take that as a yeah. Or are you waiting to open up your microphone? Yeah. Could we? Okay. Virginia, can we do something
Here we
about
go.
that? I think.
I've asked you to unmute.
Here, yeah, we got it. Yes.
Great. Thank you so much for taking the question. I really appreciate it. So first of all, I really appreciated the idea about circles and so on, but in light of the pandemic, it's also more difficult to do a lot of in-person stuff like a chess club or what have you. And the answer wasn't what I was looking for, although it was very useful. So thank you for that. What I was looking for is, how do we help people? I'm also a coach. And one of the things I've found is a lot of people are experiencing loneliness, and not just now, before the pandemic. So when they're inclined to do whatever their coping mechanism is, whether it's eating or drinking or maybe pushing themselves into the ground in the gym because they work too hard, whatever the case might be, how do we give them something that they can use in that moment to avoid the harmful behavior?
The most in the moment tool that I know of and that I offer is breathing.
Yeah.
That's like the go-to.
Okay.
If all else fails, breathe. Right.
If I could, I'll share really quickly something that I gave one of my clients yesterday.
Yes.
So he's quite overweight. He's quite an intelligent guy, and he understands all of this stuff. We've been through what's going on unconsciously. And so I suggested, okay, write down on a Post-it, I want to lose weight. So it's not, I don't want to eat, it's what I do want to do, because the mind doesn't understand negatives. Put the Post-it on the refrigerator. The next thing is, and it has an arrow. The arrow represents go to your bedroom, and there's a piece of paper that we wrote out, and actually I did it on the whiteboard here. And I just went through these things where I said, good sleep, arrow down, feel better, arrow down, happier, more productive, lighter, more successful, achieve goals. Hunger is welcome. It means I'm losing weight. I embrace it. And then the next thing is go floss, because it always happens at night. So once I get him to then move from the bedroom to the bathroom, and he's flossing and brushing his teeth, he's then less inclined to want to have to do that all over again. So now there's an action in between him and the food. So we'll see how it works. I never tried it before. I just came up with it on the fly.
Okay. Yeah. I would say first step for awareness. Yeah. Recognize that impulse, and then you can do wonders with when that person actually sees that energy. And I don't mean energy in a fluffy way. I mean that impulse that's driving us to that refrigerator, and then being able to work also with that, with the intention. Once what I see is like holding into the behavior and molding it, and see how it goes, and then work with the intention. Right.
Yeah. Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Great. So we are really close to our closing time. I want to thank everyone who shared and everyone who listened. Thank you for opening up these questions. And as I said previously, these are things that actually happen. And I usually say there are like billions of people like up in the planet. Things will repeat themselves. Like, we're not so weird, and we're not so isolated in our issues. And that usually helps with that sensation of isolation that comes with trauma. Great. Virginia, do you want to wrap us up?
Sure. Sorry, multitasking, answering people in the chat there. So I'll say for everyone, if you'd like to write in the chat your key takeaways from today or from a roundup of the sessions you watched to share with your peers here and also with Patricia. And also as a way you can write it privately if you want to remind of yourself how you can apply what you've learned in your life. Replays, as a lot of you are asking, will be available and you will be emailed. Some of you tomorrow, depending on what you've signed up for, but you will be getting emails to notify you for that. Remember, you still have time. This is day one only. This is going up through until Saturday, all hours of day and night. So you have time to spread the word. This work can change the world. I'm biased, but I think, Patricia, you may agree with me on this one. If more people are aware of their day-to-day trauma, this is the normal person's guide, to everyday little T traumas. So do think of somebody who will be grateful to know about these things. Let me quickly screen share and show you what's coming up. So we are only down here. And we've got Ron, Vilja, Nir, and Patricia again in half an hour about intergenerational trauma. We've got Ilan Stefani, what you don't know about trauma and how it can hurt you.
Actually, if you guys want to get a small dip into the intergenerational trauma, a lot of eating stuff is deeply rooted in intergenerational stuff, like families who went through famine, poverty, have lots of issues around food. Sorry. Small.
Okay. David Bercelli is coming up, who's amazing on TRE. Deb Dana is tomorrow. You can check this in your own time. So for efficiency, I'll stop sharing now. And you have the links there for you in the chat. A lot of you are facilitators, so the trauma as your superpower is for coaches and trainers. It is something special, so do check out the details. The facilitators course is all about healing and developing your trauma superpowers. A lot of us have been traumatized. The course includes group sessions to integrate what you've learned on your journey. And, it may not be for you. So there's other methods. There's TRE, there's EMDR, there's SE, there's different kinds of work. So make sure you take the decision from a grounded, resourced place, not from a stress response. And with that, I look forward to seeing you again on some of these. I'll be jumping on as a tech host and also as a participant. Thank you so much, Patricia.
Thank you, Virginia. And thank you, everyone who showed up. We're going to be here same time the rest of the week. Bye-bye.
I'll stop the recording now. What Mark did sometimes before